Well, yeah, I actually was, my granddad said it was good, so I thought.
Okay, so spotlight.
So if you have a question, you can start. you're talking right places, so we are not going to be more
Test.
talking fights.
Just wait. Wait. Just wait. 1, 2, 3. Test. Okay. Great. Hi. How are you? 1, 2, 3. Test. Just testing. Great. Thank you, everyone. Please have a seat. We will start right now. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. We'll start with a karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mākina kina ki uta, kia mātaratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura, he teo, he huka, he hau, tihe Māori ora. Kia ora koutou everyone, talofa lava. I'll be doing the housekeeping rules and doing a quick welcome. So, namaste, salam alaikum, sabedi, ni hao, konnichiwa, sawadee, and greetings to you all. My name is Naomi. I'm here on behalf of the Porirua Multicultural Council. This event tonight is in collaboration with ECTA New Zealand, Voice of Aroha, and Porirua Multicultural Council. Thank you to everyone that is here tonight. Thank you to our lovely candidates. So now I'll get to the most important part, is the housekeeping rules. So the toilets to the right of the cafe is where we can go. And then the defibrillator is actually opposite of the cafe. In an emergency procedure, once the fire alarm goes off, go to your nearest exit and then make your way to the skate park behind here, if you go through that way, or you can come through this way here to the skate park here. If we're in an earthquake, then go underneath your chairs and hold real tight under the table. If there's nowhere for you safe to drop and hold and cover, then use your hands. That's what I've been told. So thank you very much, and I'll pass you on to the team here. Kia ora.
Kia ora everybody, my name's Aarti. I am a co-host at Voice of Aroha, which is a radio program. I'm a Wellington City Youth Councillor, and today I have the privilege of being an MC and here to help you guys grill our candidates and hold them accountable to everything that they say today. So I'm really excited to be here along with Kodrian, who is now going to introduce himself. Kia ora.
Kia ora everyone and welcome. So my name is Kodrian. I'm also another co-host of today's session. I'm also from Voice of Aroha. As my previous colleague Naomi have said, this have been put together with those amazing community organizations to bring a voice for the people and a time to questions our candidates who will be the lovely one to get into parliament. Whoever be, we love you all. Thank you for coming. Before we start, here's a few rules. I need to read it for you all, guys. This is a safe place for everyone to have discussions, to have the corridor here. What that's meaning here, there's a few rules we need to follow. The program will follow that. There will be opening statement for each candidate, 2 minutes. Once you hear this bell, I will just test it. Yeah. Please stop. Yeah, that's your time. That's meaning it's finished. And then after we finish that, we all have some pre-advised questions as well. We will cover that. Then there will be time for the audience to ask you questions. So the rules apply same to you. We have 1 minute for you if you are making a question or a statement. 1 minute. When I please ring the bell, please stop your conversations there. And the other things, please keep your comments to yourself. If you have anything against any policies, when it's your time, put your hands up and say, I don't like that policy or something in a respectful way. Otherwise, I will stop anyone who is disrespectful. We don't tolerate that at all. That's clear enough to everyone, right? Great. So we will try to keep it short and lovely time and good one to start off. So we will start very soon. And before we start, there's some information, if we put it here, about some statistics that we can see all about numbers about ethnic communities. As you can see, the population of New Zealand is growing. So I left here for you guys to have a look as well on the live. By the way, we're also doing live stream here in Voice of Aroha. Those slides as well will be there. And if you keep going on the other slides, so we can see the population number is growing in this lovely country. So it's very important in ethnic communities. That's why this session's that's there to ask our questions. What kind of these political parties do for the people who are from different backgrounds and cultures? So there's a lot of information here in the slide there that show that how significant those people contribute in this country. They're significant, they contribute in many levels in the society. So today it will be all the conversations about some pre-advised question, as we'll hear from the people here about issues related to those ethnic communities and your commitment of your political parties made to those populations. So I hope we get a good corridor here and conversations about what you guys will do and how you guys will do it as well. That's important about how. We know from the promises we have heard a lot, but it's time guys show us how you guys will do it. And by saying that, then I will now hand it over to my lovely co-host, Ati, to start the questions. Thank you.
Okay, so to our candidates, you have 2 minutes to do your opening statement. I would like to invite the first candidate, Kush Bhargava. He is the president of Protect and Prosper New Zealand, and he is the candidate for Mana in the 2023 election. So would you like to give your opening statement? Thank you.
Namaste, kia ora, welcome. I'm Kush Bhargav from Protect and Prosper New Zealand. I live in Ayutthaya with my family, my wife Nidhi Bhargav and my 2 daughters and my parents. I have been in Ayutthaya and Wellington since 2004, and since 2010 I'm living in Ayutthaya. I have international and national business experience, and I have been also working as a consultant to government organizations. From last 13 years, I'm running a company called Eco Green Homes, and we are building eco-friendly houses throughout the country. With our business, we try to promote all the basic things like ethnicity, immigrants. So in our business, how we work is we support local businesses. So we have local builders, we have immigrant builders, we support them because most of the immigrant builders, when they come here, they need basically a reference. It's very hard for them to get reference. So we support a lot of new immigrants. We have people from all the religion working in our business, Eco Green Homes, from last 2010. So we try to promote all the ethnicity. And regarding so basically the reason our party was formed, I and Martin Jenkins have formed this party. And the reason we formed this party is that New Zealand is facing a lot of crises, health crisis, cost of living crisis, houses, safety. There are a lot of crises. So we formed this party so we can bring new ideas with experienced leadership. We have ideas like for housing, we promote and we basically have a party expertise. If we come in power, the biggest problem that New Zealanders are facing is housing. So we can build houses up to $600,000, including land. That is one policy we have. We have policies where people can rent to own the house because we believe every New Zealander should own his own house. Second policy we have for health. There are a lot of Asian or Indian doctors in Auckland. Every third or fourth bus driver or taxi driver is a doctor from India. So if they are trained properly, they can come back to the... This is okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kush. I would now like to invite the Green candidate, Gina Dow-McClay, to give their opening statement.
Just move the speaker towards you so we can see the screen.
This is better? Yes, Gina. Here.
Ka whapatua ana ku e takoto ake nei, ko rangi nui e tūhiu nei, kei te mihi ki a koutou katoa. Thank you, Ector, PMC, and Voice of Aroha for putting on this evening today. We've had a few candidate debates and forums now and getting towards the end of them, but really lovely to be here with you all this evening here at Pātaka. My name's Gina Darmaclay, and I'm really stoked to be our Green Party candidate for mana this year. I live here in Porirua, grew up here, not very far at all, probably the closest debate we've had to my house. Went to school out in Whitby and then went to St Mary's in the city. And for the past few years, I've been studying at Te Herenga Victoria University of Wellington, doing a Bachelor of Arts in Asian Studies, Religious Studies and Japanese. Kind of the reason why that I'm standing and the reason and the push that put me into this position right now is after Jan Logie, our former Green Party mana candidate, deciding to retire at this election, and that kind of gave me the push that I wanted to decide to actually stand for the Greens here in my home, where I've been here for the last 20-ish years. I'm standing for the Greens because we have a vision. We have a vision for an Aotearoa where everyone has enough money to live on, where everyone can live a good life. We all have a warm, dry, safe and affordable home, where we take the strongest climate action possible and we have thriving te taio for all of us and our future generations to enjoy too. And I'm really stoked to be able to chat about some of the other different issues that we haven't been able to cover in our other debates here this evening. So thank you all for coming. Kei te mihi kia koutou katoa.
I thank the candidate for their statement. I would now like to invite Barbara Edmonds from the Labour Party.
Tēnā koutou katoa, greetings to you all in the 160 languages that we have here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and in my mother tongue, Talofa Lava. My name is Barbara Edmonds. I'm the Labour candidate for mana. I'm currently the Member of Parliament for mana as well. I live in Titahi Bay with my husband Chris and our 8 children who are between the ages of 10 and 19. Before entering into Parliament, I worked as an independent government advisor to 2 National Party ministers. And then when the Labour government came in 2017, I switched roles to take on a political role with the Labour government. As part of that, I was heavily involved in the firearm reforms as part of the response to the March 15th attacks, as well as the COVID response. For me, mana, standing for mana is personal. This is where I live. This is where I'm raising my family. Over the last 3 years, we have succeeded in hundreds of millions of dollars in investment in our local infrastructure to be able to build homes. A number of schools which are not that far away from here receive lunches in schools. We removed school fees, NCA fees. These are the practical things that we have put in place to help support the people of mana and to help people with the cost of living. Coming only 19 days, I think Francis said, 19 days away from voting day. I'm here to advocate for 2 ticks, one for Labour and one for me as your Labour candidate. Thank you.
I thank the candidate for their statement, and I would now like to invite Andy Foster, candidate for New Zealand First.
Well, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Andy Foster, standing for New Zealand First. I live just down the road in Wellington, so I'm not a resident of mana, but I'm not that far away, and I have had extensive involvement in issues right around the region. For my sins, I've been a local body politician for 30 years as a councillor and as the mayor recently of the capital city, and that's a really challenging role, but one that gives you a really good preparation for Parliament as well. I've got 2 children. I haven't managed as many as Barbara. It's a very difficult one to work out with their teenagers or 20s because one's one of each. So that gives you an idea of their age. And I've, in my spare time, as much as I get of that, I'm a mad keen sports person and a hands-on environmentalist. So I love trying to fix our environment up. I'm very proud of what we've managed to do in Wellington, and that spills right through into Porirua as well, and seeing more and more people involved in looking after their environment. I agreed to stand because I think our country is going in the wrong direction. And the reality is that when you look at surveys, 2/3 of us think the same thing as well. We need to have a change. And I believe that come 15th, that we wake up on the 15th, we will know that we've got a new government. And I think the question that you face is, what is that new government going to be? Is it going to be national in the act? Or is there going to be somebody else to help them out and keep them from going too far? And that really is one of the roles that New Zealand First can play. Now, National Act will say they'd much rather do it themselves. Well, yeah, of course they would. No, I think we'll get on really, really well, Francis. I'm sure we'll get on really well. I've got a lot of good friends in both of those parties. But what you don't want, and we've seen it several times, is a party or a couple of parties going, we know what the answer is. We're going to go hell for leather for that answer. And we don't really have to listen to anybody else or take anybody else's view into account. And that's one of the key roles that I think New Zealand First can play. As an individual, I see myself very much as a centrist, and that means that I think I can work personally with both the right and the left. But we've been quite clear that we are going with National this time and not with Labour. What's that? 30 seconds? Time up. Okay. Well, I'd love your support personally for Mana and for New Zealand First, the party vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I'd now like to invite our final candidate, Frances Hughes from National, to give her statement.
Namaste. Kia ora. My name's Frances Hughes and I am a nurse. I'm also a mother and a grandmother. I lived in Mana from 1981 to 2013 in four suburbs, and as a nurse worked predominantly for 15 years at Poiua Hospital. My background in clinically is nursing, is mental health, aged care and disability. I have worked with diverse cultures through my work both in New Zealand and also overseas, working with 16 Pacific Island countries, working in Australia, which is a very diverse, interesting culture, I would say, and in the UN system in Geneva, where English was not the mother tongue. So why am I standing for National? I'm standing for National because I'm committed to the values of National. I came back to New Zealand just before lockdown and was heading up an aged care national organisation. And I was astounded at what had happened and what was occurring in New Zealand. And I do believe that we have gone backwards over the last 5 to 6 years. I stand with National because I believe in personal responsibility. I believe in rewarding hard work. I believe in equal citizenship and equal opportunities. And I believe in strong families and communities. And my experience with working with migrant cultures and migrants and refugees, as I have done in both internationally, is that the strive for growth and prosperity to have a better life and the absolute need to embrace a culture which accepts difference. And I believe that New Zealand at the moment is not accepting of difference. I think we are played against each other. I also believe that as we can take from the values of National, that we believe strongly in hard work. I want to be your electorate MP for Mana. I have the experience and I want your party vote. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. We're now going to be moving on to our pre-advised questions. And for those of you who don't know, we've given our candidates a question previously, and now you'll be able to see how each of them will answer this. So our first question.
Sorry, I'm a bit concerned here because someone took a photo of all of us sitting here. I take exception to that. I didn't think that we would have our photos taken.
Yeah.
We were
Okay.
coming to listen to our candidates.
Okay, no, thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, some other people have taken photographs as well from
Well,
there.
they need to because we didn't come to have our photos
Yeah, no,
taken.
I believe it.
We came
Yeah,
to
yeah,
listen to the candidates. Thank you.
Okay, got it. So our first question is on social cohesion. So a key recommendation of the Royal Commission of Inquiry into the Christchurch killing is the promotion of social cohesion. The question is, what will your party do to give effect to the various actions required, particularly recommendation 29, 35, 36 and 37. For those of you who don't know, I'll be reading out the recommendations, starting with 29. Direct the Ministry of Social Development to discuss and collaborate with communities, civil society, local government and the private sector on the development of a local social cohesion strategic framework and monitoring and evaluation regime. Recommendation 35. Encourage the Public Service Commissioner to continue focusing efforts on significantly increasing workforce diversity and attracting diverse talent for public service leadership roles at the first, second, and third tiers. Recommendation 36. Invest in opportunities for young New Zealanders to learn about their role, rights, and responsibilities and on the value of ethnic and religious diversity, inclusivity, conflict resolution, civic literacy, and self-regulate. Recommendation 37. Create opportunities for regular public conversations led by the responsible minister, the Minister for Social Development and Employment, for all New Zealanders to share knowledge and improve their understanding of social cohesion, including the social inclusion and the collective effort required to achieve these, and B, the value that cultural, ethnic, and religious diversity can contribute to a well-functioning society. So I would now like to invite Andy to answer these questions. Kia ora.
2 minutes. Thank you.
What's that? Are you going to start now? We've already started. Stop. God, gee, start again. God, they've interrupted me. Okay, look, thank you. Look, I think we were all profoundly shocked. We actually couldn't believe what happened in Christchurch in that atrocity that happened there. That wasn't a New Zealander, of course, but that doesn't mean that we haven't got issues here in New Zealand. And the thing that we need to do is to promote understanding. And look, I acknowledge Manjit at the back there. And one of the things that they did right up front was to get together all the different faiths. This is the Interfaith Council, who actually won an international award for the work that they did. It was to get together all the different faiths, bring people in and explain those different faiths, how they worked, what the beliefs came from. And it was a wonderful thing to draw people together to promote understanding. And I think we showcased, it was 9 different religions. And when I was the mayor of Wellington, one of the things that I most love doing is working really, really closely. So I think it's not just about MSD. The first one's about MSD doing it. It's not just the officials doing it. It's us as politicians also doing it. We empower them, we ask them to do it, but we as politicians need to be doing that. So engaging with the Interfaith Council, the Multicultural Council, that was in Wellington, but it's equally true here in Porirua. The disability community, the LGBTQI plus community. It's really, really important for our leaders to be engaged with all of those parts of our society so that everybody feels valued. That is just so important. We also need to make sure that I think the work is being done when you look at diversity in employment. I mean, I can see that, having looked at quite a number of different roles and seen they are deliberately saying we want greater diversity in that. So I think they're doing that, just needs to keep on happening. In terms of the education side of things, it's about trying to make sure that people are being good citizens, that they are understanding each other. So we bring our children up right. I think somewhere, that when we're younger, we don't really see any difference. Somewhere on the line, something goes wrong. And we've got to make sure that people right the way through the education system really understand that diversity is something to be valued, not to be feared. And if I might finish the other one, it's just it's about regular conversations. We need to make sure that there are regular conversations to promote diversity and to honour it and to treasure it. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. To sum up the points that Andy said, he said that we should promote understanding and that leaders should engage with different communities so that everyone feels valued and promote diversity. So thank you for that. I would now like to invite Kush from Protect and Prosper to share his thoughts.
Thank you. At PPNZ, we believe whatever has happened at Christchurch is not good for this country. This country has a track record of safety, and everyone is secured in this country. So we at PPNZ are proposing policies where all the religious places should be safeguard. If there's any attack on any religious place, that person should be charged with criminal offense. Normally what happens, you do any offense, you walk away. So that should not happen. Second thing, there should be money spent on proper diversity and proper education of different religions. So that is we recommend. Third thing is basically safe jobs. So if you go to any jobs, we have a policy called We Are One. There's a lot of discrimination between immigrants and other candidates. So that should be stopped, and there should be a proper process that should be followed. Then we have issues in the schools of bullying. I saw that question. So there should be proper education between the students and the parents. So students know what they are, from which religion they are coming. And if proper policies are applied, I don't think there will be any issue. So we have a lot of policies to counter these things. And immigrants, I think there are a lot of proper money should be spent by government in right places, because what is happening with the present governments, both of these governments which have been in power, if $1 is spent, 20 or 30 cents is officially used. It's 70% goes in administration. So we want a proper system, because New Zealand is presently 50% efficient as per the OECD countries. So we want our country to be efficient and productive. And we need proper government who can bring this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kush. To sum up what he said, New Zealand has a track record of safety, and he believes that all religious places should be under safeguard, and anyone that commits those kind of crimes should face serious punishment. He also talked about educational and cultural awareness. I would now like to invite our National Party candidate to answer.
First of all, I think what's important about all these recommendations is that it's about empowering communities and about empowering and identifying the key leaders in those communities. And for us, that's about having accountability and resourcing and having a discipline within the public service. The Public Service Commissioner, State Service Commissioner, is retiring. So he will be appointed by the incoming government. So this is a key thing that he should be tasked to address. Now, having worked with minorities and also with vulnerable populations, particularly those with disabilities, I'm crucially aware of the issues of stigma and discrimination and the labelling that can affect when there is absolutely lack of social inclusion, but also the lack of education. So education starts with schools. It also starts with parents being involved in schools so that they know the kinds of curriculums that are being taught. It also then goes to resourcing community groups who are doing great work. And there's an integrated approach, and that should be overseen by also the Minister of Social Development and Employment, so that we have an integrated approach, and that is part of National Party's policies. It also goes back to the basic teaching, which is teaching basics brilliantly, where we actually make sure our curriculum makes it safe for all. And as a nurse, and I honour the passing of Irahapati Ramsden, we fought for cultural safety to be brought into health professionals in this country. So everybody, it's not just everybody at every level of this country needs to embrace and understand diversity and embrace the richness that it brings for this culture and produces better outcomes for all of us as citizens.
Thank you, Francis. Francis talked about empowering communities and also education, how it starts at school, but also at home with parents educating their kids, and how the National Party believes about teaching the basics and teaching the basics really well. And next up, I would like to invite Barbara from Labour.
Okay. So the Labour Party has a goal that everyone here feels safe and feels like they belong to Aotearoa New Zealand. I am a daughter of a migrant. I'm first generation New Zealander, New Zealand born. English is actually my second language, and I still struggle actually with English, even to this day with prepositions. But the Labour government agreed to all 44 recommendations of the report of the Royal Commission. And we have been working over the last few years to try and implement them practically throughout the different government departments. One of the first things we did is we established the Ministry for Ethnic Communities. Absolutely important because before it used to be a unit within DIA. They now have a chief executive whose sole focus is to concentrate on the aspirations and inclusions of ethnic communities. And that means that these CEs are at the same table as every other CE in the public sector. We also have a social wellbeing ministers, and I'm also one of those ministers that's around that table. Ethnic communities need to be at the table in order to have their voices heard. So therefore, under our diversity around our board appointments, we've seen a 64% increase in diversity appointments. So it's around 6.7% now for ethnic communities. That's not enough. We know that needs to increase to reflect the population of ethnic communities. We've also got graduate programs that are being run to bring through graduates from ethnic communities and also to bring them through to the public sector. There's also some work around social cohesion, which brings in the integration of communities around the public sector and the private sector to ensure our ethnic communities' voices, aspirations, and what they need to be done is done.
Thank you. To reiterate, Barbara from Labour said that everyone should feel like they belong and feel safe in Aotearoa. The Labour Party agrees with all 44 recommendations, and ethnic communities should be at the decision-making table for their voices to be heard. And now I would like to invite our final candidate, Gina from Greens, to answer the question.
Kia ora for the partai. I think first up, the Greens are committed to social cohesion, and one of those key ways is to implement all of those recommendations from the Royal Commission of Inquiry. And particularly, one of those ways is by updating the Human Rights Act to ensure that we are all protected, and particularly protected on the bounds of religion, gender, disability, and for our rainbow communities, as well as for our different ethnic minority groups as well. So that's a really key part and something that we have been and will continue to push for in response to the attacks too. I think also important to acknowledge the role that community organisations can and have played, particularly acknowledging Multicultural New Zealand and their vision for a Tiriti-based multicultural Aotearoa that is socially cohesive. And when we think about wanting to ensure that everyone is coming together in our communities, we need to be doing that, also acknowledging Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the reason why a lot of us are here today, and that important relationship that we have as tauiwi of colour, as well towards or to our tangata whenua too, as well as tangata moana. So we're really committed to be honouring Te Tiriti in that process towards social cohesion here in Aotearoa.
Kia ora. Thank you, Gina. To reiterate, the Greens are committed to social inclusion. They talked about the importance of a socially inclusive Aotearoa and upholding Te Tiriti in the process. And now we have our second question, which is based on education. The Education Review Office, in its report, Education for All Our Children Embracing Diverse Ethnicities, notes, A, learners from ethnic communities experience widespread racist bullying, which too often is not taken seriously by their schools. B, learners from ethnic communities often do not feel like they belong. C, whānau from ethnic communities face barriers to engaging with schools. And D, teachers' understanding of their learners, including their culture, is key to learners' experiences at school, but this needs building. What will your party do to address these concerns? And we're going to swap the order and go to Gina. Kia ora.
I think when I read this question from when it was sent to us, I reflected on my own experiences. I'm Vietnamese and I'm Pākehā, and I went to a predominantly Pākehā school, whereas one of a couple of Asian faces in our classes, and probably didn't really recognise that when I first began that schooling experience, but definitely towards the end, and then moving to a kind of more multiculturally diverse and ethnically diverse high school, kind of really noticed that more and saw kind of the gaps that I had experienced without having some of that cultural education that I had hoped, or now kind of reflect on, had hoped to. And so the Greens, we want to see that strong education system for everyone, starting from ECE through primary school, secondary school, and to our tertiary education students as well, whether they're at a polytechnic, at a university, or perhaps taking some time off and then heading to that space too. So definitely want to acknowledge that, yeah, it is tough for some of our ethnic communities who are in schools, acknowledging that is about to become probably a more diverse space as we grow in population. And the Greens want to see, teachers who reflect the communities in our schools by supporting students who want to become teachers in those spaces, and continuing to tautoko and awhia our ethnic communities too.
Thank you, Gina. They talked about the gaps without cultural education that they had hoped, and want stronger cultural education starting young from primary school. Now I'd like to invite Barbara from Labour.
So the Labour government and the Labour Party want our students to feel safe within their schools. If you take here in Mana, let's go locally, 25% of our population is actually born overseas. We are really fortunate that we have 25% born overseas, we've got 20% who are Māori, and we have the second largest Pacific population in the country, a hugely diverse community, which therefore means that there is a bit more tolerance in our area. However, racism does happen. And what we need to do, first of all, is one, provide mental health support in schools. Some of the diversity and inclusion guidelines have been changed by the Ministry of Education to help boards when they put together the guidelines and policies for their schools. We've got Mana and Ake, which is basically a mental health program, which is being rolled out in schools as well. We need to teach our history. And I say New Zealand history. My great-grandfather is Chinese. He was a Chinese labourer that was sent to Samoa. New Zealand used to administer Samoa, and they sent the Chinese men back to China and therefore basically split up families. We need to be able to teach that. We had a Chinese poll tax. New Zealand has now had a record of apologising for these acts. However, if we don't teach the new generation about this history, we will not be able to learn those lessons.
Thank you, Barbara. They want students to feel safe within schools, provide mental health support, and teach our new generations New Zealand history. I would now like to invite Francis from National.
It's two things. In regards to what occurs in schools, there is some great success stories, and I agree with Barbara, there's wonderful diversity because of Poirua and Mana particularly, which goes from Linden to Raumati. There are schools which are celebrating the cultures in a way that makes everybody feels inclusive. As a mental health nurse, it's really important that we have support, not just for students, but also for the teachers. We need to make sure that our National has a clear policy on supporting teachers, resourcing teachers, and giving them the resource access to get the resources in so that they can support the children in the schools. But then it goes back again, as I said before, to the support for parents and communities to be involved. The other key thing is what's occurring in regards to bullying, discrimination is also a symptom of social determinants. And many of those social determinants are children coming to school or coming to school where they do not have adequate housing. Their parents do not have good incomes, that they are put into positions where the behaviours of the children are a reflection of the stress that are going on. So the only way is for communities to be actively involved with schools, for parents to be involved with schools, and then get around them with any other supports that's needed. And we agree that we want a better education system, we want better outcomes, and we want children to feel successful and to be loved and wanted.
Thank you, Francis. They said that they would like to support teachers, to support children in schools, and they also believe in the value that community involvement and involvement from parents have. And now I'd like to invite Kush. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we should look after outside the square. Whatever is happening is presently not acceptable. Like whatever has happened is not enough. So we should think outside the square. That's definitely, we need good houses. Poverty should be removed, because when the parents could not feed the children properly, this whole thing has a roller coaster effect. So that should be treated. Second thing, we should be properly teaching the proper history of New Zealand with all migrants. Presently, the history that we have is only one-sided. What Britishers have done, that's what we teach. But we don't teach what Maoris have done, what other communities have achieved. So that should be properly taught to the children. Plus, we should be caring properly what is happening at their house, why are they being bullied, what they need. So I think there's a whole thing which has to be treated from the grassroots level, not a small level. And whatever has been done till today, we won't be debating everything was good. So a lot of things have to be done with this government or whichever government comes, and we need proper people in parliament with experience who can bring a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Kush. Kush talked about that what has happened already is not enough and we should be doing more and having new innovative perspectives and teach our younger generations the history about what has happened. And now I'd like to invite, lastly, Andy.
I'm going to start off by praising Labor on this one and just say I was privileged to be at the launch of the Ministry for Ethnic Communities, and have had quite a lot of engagement with them over quite a period of time. And I think that was a magnificent move, because what it said is a whole group of people who previously didn't have a government agency, in a sense, dedicated to that part of our community now do. And I think that's a very, very positive move. So Barbara, well done to you and to Labor on that one. Looking at those questions there, bullying anywhere, by anyone, anytime is unacceptable. And I think the answer to a lot of these things, some of it is in the school. And look, in the school, we've got to get the basics right. And we're letting our kids down at the moment, in terms of reading, writing, arithmetic. But how we relate to each other has got to be a key part of anybody's growing up. So the social skills, and that doesn't matter whether your social skills with anybody, and it's got to be with anybody and everybody. And we need to make sure that, and I've seen and lots of schools, they are doing a brilliant job in showcasing that diversity and celebrating that diversity. And I think that's a really positive thing for the future. But education doesn't just stop at schools. It's the values that come from home. And I think Francis was making that point as well. If you haven't got the right values at home, sometimes it's not going to work out too well. So you've got to support people. If you know that there's a child who's struggling with this, you've probably got to look at the home situation and say, what do we do with that? So it's the wraparound support in that area. And then there's, where are the other messages coming from? Whether it's the messages through media and the positive messages that we can give through supporting, and this is a real community thing from government, local government communities, the festivals, the celebrations that we have right across the diversity of our community. And that's the way that we make that diversity visible, and it's the way that we treasure that diversity. So it's something that we're all part of answering, not just the government, but all of us working together. And I think that's the right way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Bullying in all situations is unacceptable, and we've got to get the basics down and create a strong foundation. Education also starts at home, and what positive messages can we give out to the young people? So that comes to the conclusion of the pre-advised questions. So I'd like to thank our candidates, and I'd like to thank you all for listening. But now it is your turn to ask questions. So I'm going to pass it over to Kodri, and then he's going to tell you how this is going to work.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for putting your visions and your comments about the pre-advised questions. So now it's open for you guys. If you have a question, please raise your hand. I will also have a timer here. Keep with me 1 minute. If it's a question or a statement, I will do the same. If the rings bell, please respect the time and just finish it there. Yeah. Okay, so I have two. We'll start here.
My question's around social cohesion. And it's directed really to Barbara and Gina and Francis as representatives of the National Labour and the Green Party. Last year, during the mandate protests, it ended in violence, frustration, and alienation. And my question to them is, could that have been better handled by the members of Parliament by simply coming down and talking to those people who have genuine concerns about mandates, about COVID, instead of ending up in a divided community, an alienated group of people? If they come down and talk to them, couldn't they have drawn those people into our community rather than alienating them?
Great, thank you. On time, thank you. So the question was for Gina and Barbara. Do you want, one of you want to start to answer it? 1 minute for answer.
I stand by our COVID-19 response. I absolutely stand by it. We have one of the lowest death mortalities in the OECD as a result of the work that we did. Hindsight is really easy to be able to do, to look back and think, okay, we could have changed things. However, there's no playbook for this. We had to go with what we thought was the best approach, which was to protect people's lives in order to save our economy, in order to make sure that when we came out of COVID, we still had basically a country that could run, and we had people employed, we had people who could go to school. In relation to going out to the protesters, I was in Parliament at the time. I did not feel safe. Absolutely did not feel safe. That was even just going to work. I had nieces and nephews who go to local schools, who went to the train station, to St. Mary's School, who got absolutely abused by people, sexually harassed as well. I thought that was totally unacceptable. So therefore, I understand and I appreciate that there are people, a small group, I would say, who are disaffected by it. However, my office door was always open as well. We had people who had come through the door who needed support around exemptions from mandates, and we helped them. But it was a constructive conversation, and I stand by our response.
Great. Do Gina want to respond as well? 1 minute, please. Thank you.
The Greens have stood by Labour through the COVID-19 response and acknowledging it was a health pandemic and something that we needed lots of different things for it, but particularly those vaccine mandates were an important part of it. And particularly in regards to that protest, also had friends or younger sisters of friends who went to St Mary's and went to the local schools who were directly impacted. Other people who are working in the CBD also directly impacted by that protest too. And so, of course, there is that need for building those community bridges with those who have been isolated, but the best place to do that is not always in that situation where it is heated, where there are a lot of feelings and where there are threats and hate present. It can be in other spaces. It can be in safe spaces where people are on that equal footing, where people are calm and have the resources that they need to be supported in that space too. And so we can learn a lot from that time, but definitely stand by what we decided to do as the Greens.
Great, thank you. Andy, do you want to have something?
Yeah, I was the mayor at the time, mayor of Wellington, and so I was the only serving politician who actually spent time, and pretty much not every day, but pretty much every day down there, and I talked to protesters, I talked to police, I talked to business people, I talked to the schools, I talked to the politicians because I was involved in conversations at prime ministerial level, etc. I think it could have been handled differently, should have been handled differently, and that is not hindsight, that was then sight. Because I know that I pleaded, and I know that the police commissioner pleaded with the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Police Minister, and the Speaker to engage in some way. I would talk to every single one of the party leaders, and that is 100% true because I was in the room in the conversation. 100% true. I've got the notes, and the IPCA's got the notes. So that is 100% true. It could have been handled better, and you would have had a lot less anger in our community. We were a team of 5 million, not a team of 5 million less a few people. And I think that could have been handled differently, should have been.
Great, thank you. So just, Kush, if you have any questions when people ask, you can still have a time if you want to respond. Do you want to respond on this one? Okay, no problem. Thank you. Awesome. The second question, please, Manjit, do you have 1 minute?
First, I'd like to acknowledge Barbara and Andy, who have done a lot for the ethnic communities. I have not interacted with Gina, now with Francis, now with Kush has been because he's of the same color as me. So to Barbara and Andy, thank you very much. So I hope you don't count that as a time.
It is going. Its time is going.
My question is to, other than Barbara, would you continue with the policies that are already in place? For example, Ministry of Ethnic Communities, all the actions that are being implemented right now, will you continue with those? So that is, besides Barbara, you have done it, but the others, we'd like to hear from you, whether you will be having the Ministry of Ethnic Communities going on and implementing those actions that EPMC, MSD is doing as far as social cohesion is concerned.
Awesome. Thank you. So that was a question for Andy and Bob, right? But anyone want to?
Aside from Barbara, everybody.
Okay. Awesome. Who want to start? Do you want to start? Here we go from this side.
Manjit, your question said, are we going to continue with everything that Labor's doing? Well, if we were going to continue with everything Labor's doing, we wouldn't bother having an election. But I know you didn't mean that. Are we going to continue with the ministry? The answer is yes. And actually, that's one of the places. It's a very useful place to illustrate the difference between New Zealand. I think in most areas, New Zealand First National Act will be in a very similar place. But I think that this is one where I think National and New Zealand First would disagree with ACT, who wants to disestablish quite a number of the ministries, including the Ministry for Ethnic Affairs, the Ministry for Pacific Affairs. I can't remember how many, but there's quite a lot. And I think any of the, if you like, the ministries which look after particular parts of our community, those are places that ACT wants to go, they're gone. Now, we wouldn't agree with that. So the answer to you, Manjit, is yes. And as I said, it was a great privilege to be at the launch of the ministry and to have done quite a bit of work actually with some of those other organisations which ACT wants to get rid of. So the answer is they stay. Thank you.
I think at PPNZ we believe that all these organizations, including the ethnic community, ethnic ministry, they should be more accountable. They are spending money, but if you see the charts, Asian immigrants and few immigrants get probably 30 or 40% or 20% than rest of the community. So there should be a fair treatment, fair distribution of the funds. Second thing, ethnic community is spending a lot of money on religious development. And I got the figures from internet and from government websites that they are not fairly distributing the money. They're distributing based on the organizations, not religion. So if one organization, one religion might have 200 organizations, they can get the whole fund. So there's no proper management with this government. When they gave the money for COVID, they spend the money like they drain the money. So there should be a proper system how they're spending the money. They know how to make policies to basically. Yeah, okay, thank you.
We have no intention of removing ministries like the Ministry of Pacific or any other ministry that is actually working and doing great work. What we are interested in getting discipline back in the public service and getting accountability and not wasting money. So there is some great things that have happened, and we will keep funding those, which Labor government have instigated. There's things that they've wasted and we don't agree with, but that's what happens. But for us, where there is demonstrated evidence that this is working and this is making a difference to positive outcomes to New Zealand, like the ministry, then that's, as far as we're concerned, that's going to stay. The issue is the only way that we're going to guarantee the Act doesn't get in too far with us is you've got a party vote national.
And when I just pick up the phone, if we have to, Andy.
Oh, you're so lucky.
The Greens are committed to continuing that Ministry of Ethnic Communities, and we probably won't pick up the phone from anyone who's even thinking about not continuing those ministries and offices which support our diverse and marginalised communities, because we acknowledge the need for that, particularly when we see the statistics of our multicultural and diverse communities. But also acknowledging that the Ministry for Ethnic Communities has only been around for a couple of years, and there's more to be done and to grow in that space too. And I think something else that the Greens are really keen on seeing is a Ministry for Rainbow Communities, another one of our communities that is marginalised, that has those poorer outcomes that we're seeing, and we need to support them because they don't even have an office. So it's not like that we have that one kind of accountable place for our rainbow communities, our diverse communities to go to too.
Great, thank you. I think we have space for one more question, then we will move for some organizations. Please, go ahead.
I want to focus on incomes. Before Roger Douglas' days, we didn't have to have a minimum wage. Everybody, the idea was that everybody was paid an income they could live off. These days, we don't have that. We have the minimum wage, and I don't believe National when they say they're going to increase people's wages, because they don't like increasing the minimum wage. So I'd like to hear the party's approach to incomes, because I think people need a decent income they can live off.
Mm-hmm. Great. So what's the party's approach to the income? Who want to start for me? Good. 1 minute.
Thank you. I completely agree with this gentleman. Basically, what focus we are having from last 20-25 years is basically just trying to have a basic income. I'm in the building industry. We pay $40-50 an hour. So we have to see how we can increase the income of the country, how we can do exports, how we can make our country rich. So we can be paying every person more money. We are just struggling at $22, $24, $25. We are just fighting on that thing. And the thing is, on other hand, the economy is going down. So people even can't afford food nowadays. Seniors can't afford 3 times of food. So basically, we want a balance. We want a government which have that vision for the next 10-20 years, where other countries, if you see overseas, they spend a lot of money and they have a lot of money so we can pay proper money to the employees, and employers can pay proper money. So we need those industries in New Zealand which can pay good money. And that is what is not happening. Every business is struggling. Businesses can't get money from the cash flow. Banks are not offering any money for businesses because they are self-employed. So everything is going down. So we have to look into small parties which can bring new, new rules or new things which can change, bring positive changes in your life. Thank you.
National, do you want to answer?
So we do support the minimum wage. The issue that often gets confused is the living wage. And we know that many employers are paying living wages, but many can't pay the living wage because of what's going on in our society. So the issue is that we want to actually grow the pot bigger. We want to reduce wastage, be far more efficient in our system, put discipline back in the public service. We want to ensure that we invest in technology. The biggest difference between why you earn more money in Australia than you do here is partly due to the fact of the kind of infrastructure and supports that many businesses have, which is technology. So their productivity is quite different. And we want to grow the economy. We want to grow and all prosper. And that means that all of us will benefit. Thank you.
Anyone of candidates want to answer the questions? Gina, please.
Yeah, the Greens are committed to raising the minimum wage in line with the living wage so that those who are working do have enough to pay the bills and make ends meet, but also acknowledging that for those who might be students, they might be studying, they might not be able to work due to some sort of disability or injury, or for any other reason, particularly also our families as well. We're committed to an income guarantee to ensuring people have enough to make those power bills, make those that weekly rent, ensure there's enough healthy care on the table too, alongside some of our other pledges for our renters, for ensuring we have clean electricity to power our homes too, because we know that incomes, particularly in a wealth inequality crisis, is a massive and top of mind thing for many people.
The Labour Party has always been the party for working people. So if you look at some of the changes that we've done quite recently, the winter energy payment, boosts to working for families, also looking at around the indexation of benefits rather than to inflation, it's now to wages, which were generally higher. So the reason why we've done targeted measures is because we're trying to not inflate things the way they are, because we're dealing with the cost of living crisis. And the way that Labor also deals with the cost of living crisis is we build more homes, because we know how much a proportion of a person's income is proportionate to their housing costs. Build more homes means that there's more supply, which will bring the cost down. It's simple economics, and that is supply and demand. But the Labor government, again, we have a history of dealing with income inadequacy. Fair pay agreements, which through the support of the Greens is a really important measure that we've put through in the last 3 years, so that there is a bottom line for some of our securities, our cleaners, and our bus drivers. But also the tax transfer system, such as working for families.
Yeah, well, we might claim at least a little part of the winter energy payment as well, thanks. And we've also always been very, very strong on supporting our seniors as well, and on raising the minimum wage. But the other part is we can do some things now to help people, but we've got to grow the economy. If we don't grow the economy, all we're doing is we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And so we've got to be more efficient, as you heard from some of the others. We've got to cut some of the waste. We've got to reduce some of the regulation. And you can shake your head at the back there, but the reality is at the moment, we are 20 or 30%, or maybe even 40% behind Australia. And if we keep doing that, people are going to look over there and go, yeah, actually, I can get more there, and the lifestyle's not too bad there, and they will go. And so we'll be short of teachers, we'll be short of doctors, we're short of nurses. So we need to grow the economy, and that means smarter investment in infrastructure. It means making sure our education system works. It means, as I said, dealing with waste and dealing with regulation. It means investing in things that boost productivity. So, for example, a quicker payoff for people who are investing in machinery to boost productivity. Those are the things that we need to do, because if we don't do that, we're going to keep on falling further and further behind. Thank you.
Awesome, great, thank you. I think we are finishing. We're just finishing. We are having the 3 questions, which is the organizations. You can ask in your organizations. So what we say, this is the last one. So thank you for audience for asking. We have 3 questions now. We'll follow one by ECTA. You can choose your questions. And then also one PMC, Naomi, if you have a question, then one from Voice of Oroha. Why? Because this is community organizations. We have our questions. Manjit, your time starts.
Actually, I don't want to ask a question, but make a point. Yeah. You can go back to the slide. I think one of the things that has been left out is the poverty in the Asian sector, in the Asian community. It's always assumed that the Asians are well off. Yes, we are well off. If you look at the income chart, we are the second highest average income per week. But if you look at the poverty chart, the Asians' numbers are higher than the Pacifica numbers, are about the same numbers as the Maori. So I will request that the politicians, whoever is elected and whoever gets into parliament, please look at this also. In a composite, holistic, everybody who is poor, without race. And there are people of my color, of Chinese people. My charity does food distribution 4 or 5 times a week. And
That's
out of
5
200
seconds.
we serve, 80% are Chinese.
Great.
I take that.
Thank you. Yep. You.
I think we just say we agree.
You.
Yeah, we agree.
Okay.
Don't need to say it.
Everyone agree with you.
What I think is important is that.
Please here.
On the stage, please.
Yes. please.
As a little bit of a researcher in my past life, I think what's really important is that someone does a really deep dive into what data, but also data that's from statistics, but also some of the quality of life data that needs to inform this, because otherwise what we do not want is poorly formed public policy that's not based on evidence. And we then get people jumping to solutions which do not meet the actual problem. So this cries out for decent research and analysis and an involvement of community leaders to inform it with some more observational and empiric data as well.
That's from Stats New Zealand, by the way, in case anybody's wondering.
Sorry. Yes, Kush. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have been in New Zealand since 2004, and I think this data is perfect. But the problem is whenever any government comes with any rules or any grants, they completely ignore this community. So if you see from last 10, 15 years, whatever government does, labor or national, they completely ignore one community. So that should not be the, like what I believe, not at the same level, not a fair level. So there should be a fair distribution of all the funds between all the communities, not just one or two community.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have a few minutes. Naomi, do you guys have a questions? So we have one question here.
Just a quick one. I'm from the Freedom Horticulture Council. In our area, we have an advocacy area. We put referrals through to our other communities, but also part of the national body of the Horticulture Council. My question here is, the funding that goes out to our NGOs and our community groups, because the solution is always with the community, with our people. And we've been really grateful to the public sectors under the Labour government to support and empower our community because they have all the answers. Will National have the same, what's the word? Will, if National got in, will there be some community organisations that are working and empowering all communities, Pacific, Māori and other ethnicities? Will you continue to do the same thing as what Labour did? Empowering our community and educating our people.
Thank you.
We are very clear, and it's part of our values, that we believe in empowering communities and NGOs particularly. But NGOs and community groups that are actually delivering on what they set out to, that they are resourced. We've got to realise there's many groups out there that are not able to deliver. And a lot of that's got to do with this funding arrangements. I mean, I was up in Kapiti, 26 contracts, 1 year funding. What we want to do is for those community groups who can tell their story very clear, have very good evidence on the impact they're making. Of course, they need to be the ones, because we believe in a more deregulated and a devolved system rather than central governments deciding on what you do. So absolutely, if they're working, they're doing good, they're producing outcomes, why wouldn't you want to keep supporting them?
Awesome. Thank you. So we have 1 minute. Anyone else you want to answer on this? Or we're all good? Great. So we have one last question from us as well. Arti, do you want to read our questions?
This question is from Voice of Aroha. What is your party's stance on implementing stricter hate speech legislation?
About the hate speech legislations. So any color of the governments or any other parties. So what you will do on this? On the hate speech legislations, we've been told, which was one of the recommendations as well. So your political parties, the one who's in the government, you guys have stopped that. So what will happen there? And also in the national ones, when we come back, and also how you will balance it between those guys who talk about the freedom of speech. So maybe in a short, I know the time is looks, but what will be your party? Yes, please come here. Please come here. Thank you.
It's gone to the Royal Commission. So, I mean, I think, you know, if it comes out of that body, and of course there's a system and process about then what that would mean for development of public policy. But at the moment, we can't say anything because it's sitting with the Royal Commission. So, sorry, that's all I know.
I think that's not true. The thing is that we need a proper research to be done, because what is happening with the present government, they're giving a wrong picture of hate of speech. So there should be a proper definition. What is hate of speech? Because the present hate of speech is not clear. They're just trying to promote one or two communities. So that should not happen. It should be very clear what has to be done. And we should see both the sides of the coin. That is not happening with Labour government. Thank you. Yeah, but government has to support it, and the government is not supporting it. So, yeah, but government drafted the law, and they drafted what they wanted. So what you have drafted has gone over there, not with the community. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So, is that all, Barbara? You want to, Andy? Go. So are we hearing like none of the political parties are really serious enough about to talk about this topic? Okay. Then can you please come here?
Yeah, no, the Greens have and continue to want to be implementing that hate speech law, and we are committed to updating the Human Rights Act to prevent the discrimination from our ethnic communities, but also our diverse other communities like our disabled communities, our rainbow communities as well. And of course, it has gone to the Royal Commission, and we'll have that process too, but we'll be continuing to advocate for it, because, I mean, people can say some certain things, but we should not be harmed from that too.
So the Minister of Justice had some reforms and policy proposals around this, and what had come to is that basically they needed actually independent advice on this. So it was referred to the Law Commission, who currently has the mandate to look at this, and then the government will respond according to their recommendations as they come back. But actually, one of the things that you have to balance is the freedom of speech, right, which is in our Bill of Rights Act. Unlike some parties, when basically we had this on the table, we had a lot of political backlash from this. And that makes it really difficult to make constructive change. So we all need to work together around this. And I've said this previously around some bipartisan support around climate change. This is also one of those issues because, again, Labour is committed to people feeling safe and included. One of the other aspects which I've done as the Minister of Internal Affairs is as the Department of Internal Affairs released recently safer online media platforms, some policy proposals. I worked with the Islamic Council of Women and talked to them about how do we balance that hate speech, the Bill of Rights Act, the freedom of speech, because actually in that policy document, it actually crystallizes it. It says that this is not about freedom of speech. So those policy, that's currently out for consultation. Oh, sorry, actually no, it closed at the end of July, that submission, and officials are working through that. So there's two things that are happening.
I think what you're hearing quite clearly is that there are some challenges around this, and the biggest challenge is, we don't want people saying things which are harmful to other people, and particularly things which are inciting other people to do something which is even more harmful. But at the same time, you've got, as you've just heard, that issue around balance of freedom of speech. So the question is, what is hate speech? And that's really the area which you start, and I know that there was, I think it was Chris Farfoy was involved. I think he was asked, does this represent hate speech or doesn't it? It was kind of like, not quite sure kind of answers. So it's clearly not going to be an easy one. And I think it's just one that, I think it's the right thing to have some people with some really good brains having a good look at it and trying to work out what we can make work, and that doesn't have unintended consequences on saying to people, you can't say that. And there are, the potential for people, for example, to be prosecuted for saying things which they didn't intend as hate speech, but end up being defined as hate speech. So it is a little bit of a minefield that we've got to work out between us.
Awesome, great, thank you. It's 7:10, we are coming to close this one. So I just want to thank you, all of you, for standing for this positions of candidates. Thank you for you coming here today, for sharing your knowledge and the visions of your parties and the belief you stand. Thank you everyone who are here today. Thank you for your questions as well. Thank you people who are online as well. And just to closing, thank you for the organizations, ACTA, PMC, Voice of Aroha as well, to putting these kind of things together, because it's very important, again, our ethnic communities to be represented, to their voice be heard in whatever shape and color will be in that government. What we love here on all this New Zealand is democracy. So the people out there, use your voice, use your right, use democratic rights. Whatever you vote for here, this is all people. After this, will shake their hands and we all going for dinner. Maybe not. Yeah, thank you everyone. But can I invite please Manjit here to close us with proper oath and say goodbye.
No, you go, Manjit.
No, we are fine.
Yeah.
I know Andy has another appointment.
2 minutes.
They're all good. To stand here in front of a crowd, to do something good. They are not there to do something bad. They are not all there to do something good. To make that choice is very difficult. And we wanted to hear what they have for their ethnic communities. I have worked with some of them, Andy, Barbara. Inside them, they care. So when you make the choice, please think carefully. Whom do you want there? None of them have any intentions of doing any harm to New Zealand. They want all things best for New Zealand. When you choose for it. Spend time. I'm not standing for elections. And I wish you all the best. Don't forget the ethnic communities when you get into power. Consult us, engage with us. We can show you data that we feel disenfranchised. We feel disengaged. Like some of you have said, and some of you do know that communication is what we need. We need that engagement with you. So when you're in power, remember the people who have put you up there. Not only the ethnic communities, but all. We wish you all the best. Thank you. We are closing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's good to see you, Andy.
Good job. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,